Hey everyone, I hope you guys are having a great day. I just wanted to hop on here and tell you guys thank you guys so much for watching these videos and taking some time out of your busy schedule. In this video specifically, we were interviewing Charlie Linder. I had the wonderful pleasure of meeting him in person for the first time at the North American Bee Expo. And a huge shout out to Cayman Reynolds. That was a phenomenal trade show and a phenomenal conference that he had put on, and I highly recommend for anyone who hasn't thought about going to go. The North American Bee Expo is a great time of fellowship, meeting both commercial beekeepers, hobbyists, and it's just one place where we all get to come together. And at least for us, the beginning of January is not super busy in our company, and so it's just fun to take a break and go hang out with beekeepers. So thank you so much for Cayman for putting that on for us. In this interview specifically, me and Mr. Charlie talk about some issues. We also talk about some of his hardships. He was primarily leaning towards honey production, and then a year of full warehouses and no honey sales have led him to the pollination game. He has a lot of insight into the honey industry. He also is just a very humble and phenomenal guy. Definitely learned a lot from him, and anyone that hasn't met him or hasn't talked to him, if you have any questions after this interview, please reach out to me or reach out to him, and we'd be happy to answer those for you guys. I just want to let everyone know that we do not have the silver bullet. There's a group of us that are trying to work towards doing something, and we figured that even if we don't know where to start, it's best just to start somewhere than to not start at all. And so if anyone has any insight, or if anyone has anything they would like to share, please get with us. We would love to interview you. We'd love to talk to you. The more the merrier, and we are just super, super thankful that you guys are watching this and hoping that we can all work together to fix this honey industry. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So would you mind just introducing yourself and talking a little bit just about you for a second here, and then I'll have some questions for you.
That's an interesting question. Describe myself. Face for radio, voice for silent movies. How's that? No, I'm now a commercial beekeeper. I run 5,000 hives. We were just talking a minute ago. I do mostly pollination because of the collapse of the honey market, as I see it. You know, I jumped in, started selling honey as honey just kept climbing and the price kept going up. And I have a season where the price drops in half, and I have a great crop and no income. So that changes the picture. So I do pollination now, and I'm fairly decent at it. I also write for ABJ, and I'm involved in the industry at an interesting level. That way. I got to be careful how I say things and when they're being recorded.
I understand.
But you wanted to talk about, the honey prices, and it is an interesting challenge. I don't consider myself a honey producer, but we do barrel and sell about 100,000 pounds a year.
And who do you sell that honey to?
What's that?
Who do you mainly sell that honey to?
So, I mentioned earlier, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, you're fine.
I don't mean to screw up your recording here, but I mentioned earlier that I had a year where we didn't sell any honey.
Yep.
So the building started getting full of 55-gallon drums of honey. And a little bit of me was in panic mode. But over the last 5 to 6 years, I've developed a market of secondary packers and other beekeepers who aren't capable of producing what they need, or they can outsell what they produce. Some of them have gotten into this due to the new growth we've had in the industry, and all of a sudden they're selling honey and they're having a lot of fun at it. They have 6 hives and they sold everything out, and then the next year they want to sell a little more, or the people they're selling to says we want honey all year. Some of those guys will come and buy 5-gallon buckets. Other guys will get 40 or 50 hives. They'll develop enough that they've got a steady flow, and then all of a sudden they'll have a bad year, or their bees die, or they get a new client. We got a new grocery store and we can't produce that much. So they're making that conscious decision whether they want to be beekeepers or packers. And I've already made that decision for me. I'm a beekeeper.
Yep.
So as a result, honey is kind of a byproduct for me.
Yep.
And over time, those people talk to each other a lot. So now I draw people as far as South Carolina, down through Tennessee and Indiana and Kentucky, as well as a couple local guys that come up and buy 1 to 10. I got one guy picks up 12 barrels every 90 days. He's just like clockwork. Awesome. And they are repacking it. So I'm fortunate I live in an area where we make, it's an ELA, extra light amber. It's generally about a 55 millimeter on a jack scale. And it's either extra light or light, but it is what everybody in the world thinks honey should taste like. The gold standard for honey has always been Midwestern clover honey. And I don't think clover is actually correct. I think wildflower is really the key. And it is a mixture of probably 40 or 50 different plants that bring that in. They say it's clover because if you look out there and the clover is blooming, but in our part of the country, so is everything else at the same time. We got dandelions, ash trees, elms, everything. It's just coming in from all different sources. Some of our summer honey is a little bit darker, but generally speaking, it's all about a 55 on a jack scale. We also do just a little bit of canola honey. I have about 1,000 acres of canola at my disposal. So when we come back from almonds, we will go into canola. We're generally trying to make splits, but if the honey weather looks really good, it's so hard not to stack those supers up. You're like, I should split that. No, throw stack 3 supers on it. Watch them fill it. It's just fun, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Do a little bit of that.
That's awesome. So looking at it from your perspective, what is the biggest problem or the biggest thing that's hurting the American honey industry?
Right now, what's hurting us is 2 factors, and to me it's very important to distinguish between those, okay? The first is adulterated honey, and you'll hear that and see that all over Facebook, and everybody's talking about adulterated honey, and that is an issue, okay? I don't want to get too excited about adulterated honey right now. I think myself, this is my personal opinion, I think over time that's going to clean itself up. You drive, I assume.
Yep.
Do you follow the speed limit very well?
Not all the time.
No. Do you do that because you're afraid of getting caught, or is it you just kind of drive what everybody else does?
Yeah, kind of just what everyone else does, I guess.
Well, that's the way the world works.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So when we're screaming and crying about adulterated honey, and then we think we need to police it, it's kind of like policing speeding. It's a great idea, but it's not really going to work.
Yep.
There's too many people, too many players, not enough time, too much lag time, not enough stiff penalties. All of that goes on and on. What we need to really do is put in a sharp curve or some speed bumps in this system so that there's no incentive to get a little carried away now and then.
So they have to hit their brakes.
Okay, and you're always going to have some bad actors. If you think you can police them out, I'm afraid you're grossly mistaken. So let's figure out how to make incentives so that there's no reason to adulterate honey. The price is fair, the market's fair, you can't sell it. Oh, by the way, you know, you're on this naughty list over here maybe. You know, all kinds of different ways to do that. But that's only a small portion of it. Here in the U.S., we generate about 150 million pounds, but we use 3 times that. Okay, we import twice as much as we actually produce. That's just the realistic numbers. It's been that way for the last 10 or 15. It's not going to change. We're not suddenly going to produce 300 million pounds of honey next year. Okay? Yeah. We might bump it up a bit, but we're not going to get carried away. So importation and adulteration are always going to be issues. I don't know whether you know this or not, but there are actually Chinese companies out there who go to trade shows to sell equipment to show you how to make funny honey. They go to bee shows to sell you funny honey.
Or they'll go to big food conferences and show you the products that'll pass certain testing and things like that.
Oh, look, this one passes NMR. And you're like, why?
And they're open about it. And it's like,
you.
Does anyone else hear this, or is it just?
It's not against the law.
Nope.
There's no law against trying to pass a test. Okay? So that's the problem on a worldwide scale with a lot of issues. The real issue, as I see it, is twofold. Consumer protection. Okay? You can buy a fresh, never frozen turkey. And what that means is that turkey was never stored at 0. Okay, the legal definition for frozen is 0. So you can store it at 1 degree Fahrenheit, not Celsius for those of you listening. Understanding that in the real world, you can bowl with that turkey, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But it's still sold as fresh, never frozen.
Yep.
We have, I think it's Mel Bio, has more than honey. There's so many of them out there. And there's bee-free honey. All of that stuff is out there, okay? And none of that will ever fall under adulteration. It's bee-free honey.
But do you think that'll actually ever take off?
That is the $100 question. So let's look a little bit at history. You're young enough, you don't have a lot of this history. Okay, I'm an old fart. I turned 60 in a week. All right. Wait! I can't let that get out there. Everybody thinks I'm young, right?
We'll cut it out.
And beautiful, yeah. But in the 50s and 60s, almost everybody had beehives around. Okay, and it was for sugar, because sugar cane, a 5-pound bag of sugar at the grocery store was a big deal.
Yep.
You know, that was like, wow, look at this. So we had honey for sugar. We didn't have as many sweeteners. If you want to go back even further, World War I and World War II, beeswax was used to fight the war. It's used for bullet lubricant. It's used for cosmoline. Beeswax and diesel fuel mixed together makes cosmoline, which is a rust preventative used on almost every military vehicle out there. So through the chemical revolutions of the 60s and 70s and 80s, all of that usage went away. Okay. On top of that, sugarcane became easier to process. Shipping it in from Cuba and South America and other countries became easier because international shipping became a standard. You know, in the 60s, you got a car from Japan. That was a big deal. Now you go, it'll be here in a week or I'm upset. Okay? There's so many boats moving back and forth. And none of that stuff was around when I was your age. Okay? So now, in the 70s, we developed high fructose corn syrup production on a global scale. That was really the tipping point for us. That was the point where honey is a niche item. Okay, now a lot of Americans are still used to it. It's still part of their history. It's part of their food requirements in their heads, but not in the cupboard. Okay, you can buy any sort of sugar or sweetener you want. My wife keeps a guava syrup on the stove, and she uses that in her coffee instead of honey. She thinks it gives it a better taste. But that is the nature of where we're at in the world today. If you want a sweetener, odds are it's not honey. It's sugar, it's high fructose corn syrup, it's artificial sweetener, saccharins, all of those are out there. If you're in industry, same thing. You're looking for the cheapest, sweet, flavored taste. So,
but a lot of the food industry will use honey because it has an added value. You put honey on your granola bars or cereal, and you automatically, in the consumer's head, it's a health product, so you're adding value by adding the name honey to your product.
As long as you understand that the value is in the name.
Yep, it's not in the actual product.
Exactly, and not in how much you used. Okay, we'll take our lovely favorite, Honey Nut Cheerios. Everybody loves Honey Nut Cheerios, right? If you want to get into it, figure out where General Mills gets their honey and how much they actually use. You know, Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey Whiskey. Find out where they get their honey, and you won't be as pleased as you think you would be. And those are actually our opportunities. As an industry, we need to figure out how to pull a little bit together and put some shame on these companies. And say, look, you're out there buying Vietnamese fake honey and you kind of know it and don't care because all you want to do is use our little bee on your logo and you think you're in great shape. And we as an industry have not done any policing of that. That's something we might be able to do. It's a marketing opportunity for us.
Absolutely.
But we've got to get our crap together first.
Don't we all?
Well, we talked earlier about understanding the project. And that's what you're trying to do here is, what are the issues? And you're going to hear a lot of whining and griping and complaining. But you got to formulate a plan of where is the money. And the way it stands today, you being a youngster, you won't see this as well, is that it's in the consumers. We have to figure out how to educate and make the consumer discerning in what we want. You're always going to have $1 a pound honey at Costco. And you're always going to have that price-conscious shopper who's out there just buying that because they don't know any different. If we could double the number of people who understood what U.S. beekeepers actually do, we can change our entire industry.
I think that people, and so we own obviously a hobbyist store. We own a bee supply.
Okay.
there's a lot of people that come in and you're like, oh, why are you getting into beekeeping, or why are you getting honey or whatever, and oh, because my granddad did it, so I'm wanting to do it now, or my great granddad did it, so I'm wanting to do it now, and I'm going to put these bees in a box and they're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do. Last year, our state, we did some things in schools. So we were asking kids, like, so I'd ask all the kids every time I'd walk in there, what do you guys think beekeepers do? They say, oh, they put bees in boxes, put them out in sunny fields, they come back, take honey off of them. No one understands the process that and the sweat and the grime that we go through to produce the product that's on that shelf.
Well, are you familiar with paradigms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to change your entire paradigm.
Please do.
I think you're mistaken.
Okay.
As American beekeepers, our product isn't honey.
Mm-hmm.
Our product is produce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. American beekeepers are responsible for probably 60% of the produce.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Now, your brain immediately goes, oh yeah, the commercial guys are out there. Well, yeah, we are. But so are you with one hive in your backyard.
Absolutely.
You are pollinating the peach trees for your neighbor Ed down the road.
Oh, yeah.
The cucumbers, the 470,000 squash that you can't get rid of in July, those are your bees' fault, okay?
Well, you look at Costco and places like that. I mean, think about how many melons and apples and everything that they sell there that bees contribute to dramatically.
So if we can change the paradigm of the U.S. consumer thinking of beekeepers and this little jar of honey
to the food they're eating on their tables.
The food you're eating, and I need to buy the honey to support these guys. That helps keep my food costs down. If we can change that paradigm, our world changes. And if we don't change that paradigm, honeybees remains a niche sugar, a really cool tool. And it dies. And I'll tell you how I know it dies. Because in the 50s and 60s, comb honey, everybody wanted it. Mm-hmm. It's just really cool stuff. The guys just pop it in their mouth, chew the wax, some spit it, some swallow it out. You know, or I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Some swallow it, some spit it out. I'm too excited. What can I say?
No, you're fine.
So, I don't know, about in the late 90s, 2000, I had a couple of people, and everybody, oh, you gotta make comb honey. Gotta make comb honey. So we made up some comb honey. I had a good year that year. We probably made 8, 9 boxes of comb honey. So, you know, 300, 400, 500 sections. I still have some of them. Okay. The number of people who can look at that and go, I want that, is tiny. Okay. They grew up with it. They knew it. And that's what we're facing here. It sounds weird.
Yep.
But most people look at comb honey and they go, what am I supposed to do with that?
Absolutely.
That's what's happening to our jar of honey.
Yep.
Oh, I can use this in baking? How do I do that? Okay. We are becoming a niche market. Yep. Our grandmothers said, I'm making cookies with the honey. Yep. I'm out of sugar. Pour a little honey in. Okay. They knew how to do that. If we don't see that coming and understand that and change that, we're in trouble. Mm. So my personal opinion is to change the beekeeping industry to 2 things. The creators of produce. Yep. And the protectors of pollinators. Now we're heroes. Absolutely. And they buy our stuff because it helps us.
They want to support that.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for explaining that to me. I really appreciate that.
Okay. It's the product of many, 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 many hours of studying the industry and listening to things like Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, and Tipping Point Redo, and What the Dog Saw, and go on and on. So if you're ever reading and studying, look up Malcolm Gladwell's stuff. It gives you a different perspective on the entire world.
Absolutely.
And 40 years in the engineering world. So in business, you always have to understand what your product really is. And we have to understand, looking at history, which I have the benefit of and you don't, is that the image of beekeepers is completely different than it used to be.
Absolutely.
So if we remade ourselves and we've changed, I think we need to focus on what we can be or should be in the future. And how do we get there? Mm-hmm. That's the key.
That's the key player.
Yeah, I hope to be a part of it. If my wife doesn't kill me when I get home.
So when you look at, if there's, say sideliners or commercial beekeepers that are just in a rut and are thinking about giving up now, or think of what they can do and trying to see a light in all of this darkness, what is something that you would tell them?
Wow, that is a tricky question.
I have all kinds of great questions for
Well,
you.
let's be honest, and we have to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Please.
All of our commercial beekeepers, with very few exceptions, are in the twilights of their life. Okay, our median age is probably close to 70. Okay, now we don't show it because most beekeepers are young and healthy looking. We're in the field all the time. We're in the sunshine. We're moving stuff. We exercise a lot. We get a lot of sunshine. So I walk up to beekeepers all the time. I had one the other day. Walked up to him, was talking to him. He's 84 years old. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm 84. One of the few guys that's been married longer than me. He's 84. I'm like, you're 84, and he's still running bees. What is wrong with you? So if you're one of those 60, 70-year-old beekeepers, you got what you got. What we really have to be thinking about is the next generation. What does that look like? How do we set this industry up so our kids and grandkids and people we don't even know who are going to be the commercial beekeepers in 20 years can stay in this industry and be successful? And that's what we really need to focus on. And it's not popular to a guy who's going broke right now.
Nope.
He's not worried about what this industry looks like. But Andy Strelo, I don't know if you know that name or not. Okay, Andy's a good guy. Like him to death. I met him at a hotel in California because we were pollinating almonds, and we all stay in the same hotel. So I knew Andy. I had no idea who Andy was when I first met him. I had my first load of bees out there, and Andy's there. We're having breakfast and talking, yakking. Andy's only 40.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that's going to be around for another 30 years. But he's rare. He's the only big commercial beekeeper I know that's under 50 years old. Most of them, like I said, are in their late 60s and 70s. He stands a chance if he can survive long enough to see this change in the industry. And he is a big honey producer. But he's got a family full of kids. I think he's got 9 kids. Him and his wife are just wonderful parents. I spent a lot of time out there with the kids. They got the kids out with them in California. And they got a passel of them. And I know Andy's worried about what he's going to leave the kids. How do we get guys like that involved in changing the message? I don't know. It's a tough battle. Our goal, and we've talked about this a little bit offline, is to build a new organization to help facilitate that and have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. We're also trying to figure out how we get the right people in the room to understand what that 5-year plan actually looks like. And I think we're making progress. But, you know, I referenced a couple books there, Malcolm Gladwell's. I don't know how much you read or if you listen to audiobooks or not.
I'll read them.
Okay. Look up Malcolm's Tipping Point and go through it and listen to it, read it, whatever you want to do, and study what he does. What he talks about is things that have changed the world. And it was written 25 years ago. It's just kind of a small paperback. It's not, you know, there's not a lot to it. I think it's an 8 or 9 hour listen on Audible. Okay, listen to while you're driving. Just think about it. And after you've thought about it and digested it a few days and understand what Malcolm's saying is that small little things can change your entire world perspective. Go back and listen to The Tipping Point Redone, which is just, it's only been out for like 6 months. I talked to my friends and I'm like, there's a second one? Jumping up and down. Yeah, go listen to it.
Yeah.
And he talks about gay marriage in the United States. Okay, now you're a youngster, you don't remember this. In the 90s, Bill Clinton was our president. You don't even remember him, do you? Okay.
I only know him because he was the imported honey guy.
Yeah, well, Bill Clinton was a quasi, for that time, very liberal Democrat, and that's okay. I'm not picking on that at all. He just signed something called the Defense of Marriage Act. Okay, and the way he phrased that was we're implementing the sanctity of marriage on a federal level in 1996, 97, 98, somewhere in there. Don't quote me on the dates, okay? So at that time, at a federal level, marriage between a man and a woman was the law of the land, mentally and legally. So in Malcolm Gladwell's book, he talks about this. He says there was I don't want to call it the homosexual marriage, guys, but they decided they wanted to be married too. So they got together and they had a meeting. And this is taking the tipping point and taking its lessons and using them. So they sat down in Philadelphia in 2002, 2003. It's in the book. You can read about it. And they had a meeting and said, how are we going to change this? And you don't recognize this because you're young, but we went from in the late 90s, the Constitution of the United States says gay marriage is not legal, to in 2020 it's legal in every state. I don't remember that change. It just happened. Except it didn't. This was a planned strategy pulled around in the background with some wins and losses. Some guys who actually sat down and said, we need to plan this out. We have to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
We've got to come together and say, what does this look like 20 years from now? And how do we get there? And there's going to be some missteps and some mistakes.
Absolutely.
But we've got to take Malcolm's lessons of how to change the world. I shouldn't say lessons, they're more of examples. We have to take these examples, this history, and figure out how to apply it to our industry.
Absolutely.
That's what we're working on.
That's what we're trying to do.
And you can help us with that. You're part of that. So,
well, thank you so much for talking to me. I really
Not a
appreciate
problem.
it.
I look forward to having you help us.
Yeah, I look forward to helping.
You're going to be the beneficiary of this kind of stuff. You know, you got a long career ahead of you. You don't want to hear that right now. You don't want to think about being 60, do you?
Thank you, Mr. Charlie.
Not a problem.